Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is going to be a little commentary with some gameplay that's completely unrelated in the background, and it's going to be going over my recent adventure to the convention centre in Manchester to go to the Play Expo 2013. So, I'm going to go over a general overview of the convention itself and my experience with it, and just a little bit of a diorama of what happened and what have you. I'm not going to be mentioning Dark Souls specifically because I'm going to talk about that in some different videos. There's going to be two videos of those for people to look forward to. There's going to be one covering the Mirror Knight and there's going to be one covering the demo itself. But as I've said, this is not for Dark Souls, guys. This is just a general, overview of the convention. And do bear in mind my chair's kind of squeaky, so I apologise in advance. It's on its way out. I do need a new one. But for anybody that doesn't know, in England, there's not that many conventions that happen. There's a handful of them, and there probably are more here than in some countries, but compared to a place like America, which is very vast, there's a lot of stuff happening there, and not so much happening on our tiny little island. But there are things if you look for them, and this is just one of those type of things. There's a much bigger iteration of it in London, the capital, which is called Eurogamer, and that is the commercial and the business and then the public aspect of a game industry trade show. So you've got, all your people there with cameras, you've got the devs there, you've got the general public there, you've got the press there, you've got a lot of stuff happening. And what happens is, because the people that have gone to that one, have taken the time to do these tours to get more publicity, there's generally a bit of a feed from that go up to Manchester and take part in this particular expo, because it's kind of like the bastard child at the side of the proud child on the number one spot on the plinth. So what generally happens is there's this amalgamation of elements that were at Eurogamer, and then it's combined with these other elements that make it the Play Expo, which is namely, there's a heavy emphasis on cosplay, there's cosplay competitions, there's a heavy emphasis on retro gaming and old gaming things. There's also big notions of beat 'em up tournaments, Street Fighter tournaments, sitting down next to a dude playing on a cabinet or playing with some sticks on some Xboxes set up. A lot of competitive stuff, a lot of just every console you can imagine, dating back to the dawning of games, the very first epoch generation of games, and all the way up to the more recent stuff. And then on top of that, you have there's card tables. There's all kinds of stuff. There's stores, there's shops, there's merchandise, there's a lot of different things, and it all culminates in what was last year a pretty damn awesome experience. And this year, I've got to say, folks, it was pretty disappointing. So I'm going to give you the reasons why as I do another general overview. When we went last year, there was a lot of stuff. It's a big room, it's a massive warehouse that's rented out. Just imagine just an immensely big space that's just completely densely filled with game stuff to do with this hobby that we all enjoy. And this industry that's, one of the largest industries ever, and ever growing too. And my problems with it last year was there was only a handful of things I wanted to really see. Because don't get me wrong, when there are old games and retro games and things like that, there's nothing better than a good nostalgia trip with your friends. Like, we spent so much time playing GameCubes and stuff, and playing games that I own that are on a shelf behind me right now. But I always feel like the real spirit of this kind of convention, for me personally, is to find the stuff I don't have access to, and to take advantage of this opportunity. And one of the coolest things about this particular type of convention is they normally have an arcade section with pinball tables and, candy cabs, the E-Great candy cabs from Japan, and just tons of cabinets and things of that nature. And a lot of people might think, well, there's no real need or want for that type of stuff anymore. But I grew up in a generation where arcades were like the lifeblood of my gaming childhood, because, before I was old enough, or before my parents had enough money to buy consoles in the house, or even before there were a lot of consoles available in the house that weren't ridiculously priced, you went on holiday to the seaside and things, and you had, the beach front that was filled with arcades. And I've got a wealth of stories and memories of playing, Mortal Kombat and Virtua Fighter and all sorts of different games, the gun games and the driving games and stuff. And I wouldn't have those fond memories if it wasn't for the way, that gaming was at that time. So there is a big, lust and just, a glisten in my eyes when I do see those older things. And it's nice that we still have them, because arcades have kind of died in this country. They've kind of died in most countries except Japan, and even there they're probably struggling, because we're just not a culture that's bred that way. There's too much, things at home. There's too much digital and easy to pay for, easy to buy and own, rather than, traveling somewhere to put coins in. So that's a big thing about this convention that I enjoy. And I generally look for the really obscure cave shooters, the shoot-em-ups, the Danmaku ones, and albeit they are pretty rare. They did have one there this time. It was Death Smiles, but unfortunately that's been ported to Xbox, and I already own it. And I was looking for perhaps something like Ketsui, which is one I really love that I've only had the pleasure of playing once on a cab. And maybe the original Mushihime-sama, or Mushihime-sama, I'm not too sure of the pronunciation. I think it's the Insect Princess. And I own that on the PS2. I bought a very expensive import version. So these are not new games, but the games that I want to try on the cab. And there's a few other ones that, if they would have been there, I would have had a lot of fun with. But there were none at this convention, unfortunately. And I wasn't expecting any, because it doesn't generally have them. But I'm always optimistic. And last year, because they didn't have that, the only real thing that was left for me personally, aside from the nostalgia stuff, was the big, promotions for the games that were coming out. And one of those big ones was Zone of the Enders, the high-definition remix in the Konami booth, and Metal Gear Solid Revengeance. And I played both of those in that booth. I had, a decent demo with them, but I didn't really dig it too much, because I didn't understand how to parry on Metal Gear Revengeance, because the tutorial on the screen made it look like you had to push the analog in rather than at a direction, and I didn't figure it out, so I was just getting beat up by the boss, and he destroyed me, and he killed me like 4 or 5 times, and I wasn't really having that much fun with it. And I knew that in a couple of weeks or so I'd be able to play that demo at home where I'd be comfortable to do it, and I was on a time limit, and then you had to queue, so I didn't really, do much with that. But they had, Medal of Honor Warfighter, which me and Lummy queued up and played. They had a bunch of stuff. Nintendo had a massive force there. There was everything from the 3DS to some of their new games. And my memory is a little fleeting on some of the other stuff that they had, but it was just packed. And there was new stuff, there was old stuff. There was Devil May Cry, or the DMC. There was 4 different TVs just in the middle of random games that were set out. There was no queuing for it. There was no booths. So I was able to sit down with that demo and play it like maybe 7 or 8 times, because nobody kind of knew it was there. It was hidden behind all these like Darkstalkers cabinets and stuff, and TV set up to play Injustice and Marvel vs. Capcom and things I'm not really interested in, and then, Devil May Cry. So I ended up having a lot of fun, but at the end of it, it was disappointing, because I was expecting there to be more. And the biggest knock this year is on the pamphlets and the advertisements. They were saying how it was going to be bigger than ever, it was going to have more things than ever, it was going to have all this other stuff, and it didn't. It was smaller. It was bizarre, in fact. It was almost like there was less there, but more people. So instead of always having an opportunity to sit down and play some of the games, we walked around 5 or 6 times. Like, I walked around with my girlfriend on top of this, maybe 3 or 4 times, just looking for something that we could play, and it was constantly so fucking busy that there was nothing. Just absolutely nothing. And it wasn't like that last year. And don't get me wrong, you could have stood there and you could have queued, but why am I going to stand and queue for a game I already fucking own when I can go and do that for Dark Souls 2? Or I can go and do that for... They had PlayStation 4 set up with the Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag demo, but the queue was so long, it must have taken like 3 hours just to get on it, and the only reason I wanted to do that was to touch the pad. I have no interest in Assassin's Creed, so I didn't end up touching that. But they had a very small section for Nintendo products. I don't really understand Nintendo anymore. I've gone from being an absolute fanboy to not really caring, because they used to be innovators, and now they just don't seem to know what they're trying to do, for me personally. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that love that, but I don't understand who the Wii U's for. Because on this one side, they've bought up all these IPs to have it this more mature direction, with some horror titles and some action titles and some, just not necessarily the childish kiddie image that Nintendo has. And then on the flip side, all it is childish kiddie stuff, all the fucking super colourful things and stuff for the housewives and that. And the marketing didn't help them, because everybody just thinks the Wii U's like something you plug into your Wii, and it's not. So I just don't really understand what's going to become of Nintendo with this unless they start putting out games, because there are just no games. It's an interesting situation. So I didn't end up playing anything at the Nintendo booth, because they had this Pokemon machine where you spun this wheel, no idea what that was about. You got like stickers on your hands and things. They had Mario Kart 1,000,000 or something. They had a Zelda on the DS, and I didn't really get a chance to see much inside the booths. They had the booth girls, which is another interesting thing to analyse, where, you know, with the heights of equality and sexism, they're still presenting Nintendo products on the tits of women, which, you know, there's a whole other thing to analyse there, but we'll leave that. And then aside from that, there was the Oculus Rift. And the Oculus Rift, man, all queues all day for it. It was pretty crazy. And apparently, Lummy and Ryan and a few of the others that we were with, they managed to have a go on it. And you only got 3 minutes with the demo. And looking at the queues, people were queuing for like an hour to get on this thing. And you got 3 minutes. 3 minutes to essentially, you know, either shit yourself or be sick, because it messed with people's perceptions so much that they felt ill. I don't know. Like, it looks really cool, and I think that is definitely the future, but I don't think right now we are ready, or the technology is ready for that to be a very viable thing. But everybody who went in with skepticism, they've strapped that thing on and they came out saying, you know, it's real. The Oculus Rift is real. That thing is going to blow some minds when it starts coming out, and when they start to really harness the power of it. But unfortunately, I didn't have a go because I had a really bad stomach going to the convention. I drank the night before to try and help me sleep, try and put me down. And it did help because, you know, I got a nice buzz on. But when I woke up, my stomach was turning. And I ended up having a coffee immediately and a bacon sandwich. And then we were immediately in a car and then driving for an hour or so to get to the convention. And that drive was absolutely fucking hellish because I just went from 0 to 10 in feeling like absolute shit and like I was going to die and be sick. I was tingling all over my body and my extremities and stuff. It was just bad news. I was burping. It was like how I didn't vomit or open the window and just barf on the car behind us. I don't know. And immediately when we got out, we went into the Trafford Centre, which is next to the convention, got some water, had a walk around, you know, some fresh air, and I felt fine again. So it was just, I didn't want to go on the Oculus Rift because I'd had such a dicky stomach that entire time. But the Oculus Rift aside, there was not really anything else. There was the big Dark Souls 2 booth, which is great. There was a couple of PCs set up to show some other stuff. I think there was some indie stuff. But as far as the new games or the games that are coming out, there was no push at all. There was no... You know, there's a lot of stuff coming out in the next year, and it doesn't all have to be next gen. But I thought they would have at least had some presence in this place, and they didn't. You know, the entire area was spaced a lot more than it was last year. And last year they had a huge pro scene where there was competitive Call of Duty teams, competitive Halo teams, and tables just stacked to the brim with system-linked, you know, LAN setups for those games on multiplayer. There were hundreds of them, and this year none of that was there. It was just kind of spacing everything else out. And they did have some awesome PC setups with Quake, Counter-Strike, you know, some of the old greats, and everybody was having good fun with that. There was a ton of beat-em-ups. There was beat-em-up competitions happening. I actually got in the queue to Dark Souls 2, and I was talking with a guy who actually set up the thing. He set up this certain beat-em-up area of the convention. He had a t-shirt on. He was part of a fighting team, and I didn't know he was anything like that at the time. We were just talking Dark Souls, you know, waiting to play the demo, but he was involved in that, and there seemed to be a lot of, you know, excited people watching the fighting game competitions because there was a Street Fighter 4 tournament, and a lot of people were watching that. A lot of people were being very vocal and enjoying themselves, but from my perspective on what I wanted to play, there was nothing really. And it was one of those weird things where I was so used to looking around and having, you know, things to do and things to go to. And this year, it was the allure of Dark Souls 2, which in the space of about 4 hours of queuing, I got to play twice for only 20 minutes each, which is not really worth the goddamn concentration camp on your legs when you're queuing, because, you know, I'm not used to standing up without being able to move for that period of time. It's not cool. And it was tough. And to make it worse, when I was queuing for those things, because a bunch of subscribers had turned up at the convention and they knew I was there, I ended up meeting a few of them, and two of them in particular that you may be familiar with, Hobo Jesus and Heretic. They were hanging around with our group for pretty much the full duration, and those poor guys, like, they were standing with me and getting none of the benefits of standing with me, so it was kind of sucky for that. but there's nothing you could have done. You know, there was no fast pass, there was no getting in or anything. It was just stand, and it was a lot of queuing. And I know that this is obviously the reality of this kind of show, but it's just, I don't know. Some of it just didn't feel worth it for a lot of it. And it's a smaller show, so there's usually a lot more, you know, comfortability with it, and it didn't seem to be there this year that I didn't notice. And there was a ton of interesting stuff if you were interested, but they didn't have a lot of the stuff they had last year. Like, there was a massive Halo presence, and there always is. There was tables of LAN Halo 2, you know, LAN Halo 3, LAN Halo 4. Like, if you're a Halo guy, you were in fucking heaven. But there was no Call of Duty at all. There was no Gears, and last time there was a ton of Gears. There's a ton of stuff that I would have liked to have seen that just didn't seem to be there. And, like, one thing I would have loved, and I know this is unrealistic, but at the same time, it's something that I'd love to see, a Dark Souls LAN. You know? What would that even be like? Is that even possible? Just to see what invasions are like without the latency. I think that would... Like, if there were, you know, 8 to 10 tables or chairs and TVs set up with Dark Souls for a LAN like that, I would be invading all day and fighting people and just having a ton of fun, you know, shit-talking and what have you, but that wasn't even there. There wasn't even Minecraft this year, and there was a ton of Minecraft last year. But just... Little crazy things that didn't make sense. Like, this is a massive open floor space where I don't know how many people probably turned up. It might be something like 30,000. I'm not too sure. I'm not good with, you know, big numbers of people. But there was a ton of folks there. And the men's toilets, there was one male toilet to my knowledge, and I looked all around this place. It had 6 fucking toilets that you could sit down in. There was a ton of urinals, don't get me wrong. There was like maybe 30 urinals, which is fine. But I'm not going to shit in a urinal. I'm a man, not a savage. And it was one of these things where when you were queuing for them, because I come from a village where you were actually brought up and raised proper, you have manners. So I'm quite a polite guy when it comes to letting people go before me and holding doors and stuff. And these people weren't. They just fucking bum rushed them. Like, I was queuing for about 30 minutes to go to the toilet, and at this time, I know this is probably too much information for some people, but I was busting for a shit. I've been busting for a shit for a while, and we went and had a KFC, which just makes it even worse, because that's just like a diuretic. It's straight in there, it's a laxative, it's coming out, it's got to come out if you've got a good metabolism, and I have. So, I really needed to go. I was in some fucking pain, and there were kids that were just rushing and bumming in front of queue to go in these stalls, and you know for a certain there were a handful of people that went on them stalls that are the people that are too shy to take a piss. Like, what is this big thing? It's a dick. We've all got one in the male, you know, category. Nobody's looking at your cock. Nobody cares about your cock. They just want to pee. They just want to get it out. You don't have to go into cubicles. And the funny thing is, Lummy's guilty of this, the vain bastard. I know he went in there to take a piss. And I don't get it. I'm not a nervous weir. I'm not. I've just never been that way. So it took me ages to go to the toilet. I tried 4 or 5 occasions to go to the toilet and ended up not going. So when I finally did go, it was almost like a fucking, like an earthquake. It was like a cataclysmic event to finally, you know, go to the bathroom and relieve myself. And it sucked. And it made queuing for stuff. It made just the general enjoyment hellish. And it was all because the facilities weren't set up correctly, and it makes no sense for something so big that they would have such a bad setup. And I mean, that's not even mentioning the queues to get in, because we queued for about an hour to get in, and they were cutting the queues in half, people were jumping in queues, there were queues for different tickets. It was ridiculous. It was the stupidest thing you've ever seen. And we kept a high spirit, because we were just joking and having a laugh. But it was cold, it was raining, it was windy, it was, you know, all the worst parts of the Bible. And this is not the first time they've held it. And to me, the only thing I was thinking the entire time with a lot of it is, how can you organise something of this scale with this much money put into it, yet do it so fucking bad? Like, I am of the belief that if I were to, you know, commit myself to doing something, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, and I'm going to make it run, I'm going to make it functional, I'm going to make it work. And I'm sure there's a lot of people there that were just as frustrated as I was, as an onlooker, that stuff wasn't working the way it was supposed to. And it was just really baffling. And there was a little... There's always moments like that at these kind of things, but there's also the people that present them that I noticed that... It's unfortunate that they have to do this as a job, and some of it's not paid, some of it is. Like, some of them aren't even anything to do with the companies that they're supporting, so if you try and talk to them and, you know, give them any kind of conversations, because When I come to something like this, I'm always on the lookout for the devs because I want to talk to people, I want to get contacts, I want to try and either sell myself or just ask them how they got to where they are, how they got their break, so that I can look into, finding my own break. And a lot of the times when you talk to these people, you throw a difficult question and they're just like, oh, I'm sorry, I only work here on weekends, and they've got nothing to do with the company. So it can be awkward and just, counterintuitive for that angle for somebody like myself. But that's not their fault. Manchester is Play Expo is small compared to the Eurogamer. It's a smaller one, so you're not going to have that same kind of presence. But one thing I did notice, and I've noticed this a lot at conventions, is the people manning the booths aren't gamers, or aren't traditional gamers in a sense. Some of them might be. Obviously, there's always an exclusion to the rule, but it's really strange. And I've noticed this both years I've gone. I've seen them doing things like herding and corralling people, to rush through these demos or to get through certain things that they might have been enjoying just because they think that this person is either stuck or needs help and they don't. And I can understand there's a wide range of skill levels and some people will need help, but a good example was the Dark Souls 2 demo. When you sat down at the desk, you were on someone else's game, wherever they had been when they had been playing before you took their place. So the person before you went forward, he told you, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to pause the game and I want you to quit, so that you can start a new one and pick your class. Which is fine, he's told everybody to do this. I hope if you're sitting down at a Dark Souls 2 beta that you know what a start button is, and I hope you know how to quit a game, and I hope you know how to follow things on a screen, because you're there. You're looking into this game, or you're wanting to play this thing, so you obviously have some kind of knowledge. You've got thumbs, you've got a brain. And what would happen is people that didn't do it immediately, or even people that were trying to do it, the people who were in charge were taking the pad off them and quitting the game for them. And I'm all for helping someone who's in trouble, but I find it kind of patronising when they're not giving people the time to do something. And I don't really get that. Like, then the guy came over to me and I'd quit that fucking game before I'd even put my headphones on, man. I've quit thousands of games. And he was like, oh, you quit, oh, you've done it, it's okay. It's like, yeah, you told us to quit, I just quit. And it was just this weird moment of, not everybody needs you to forcefully take, the pad off them. And it makes me think of driving instructors. If anybody's had a driving lesson, and you've had a bad instructor, and they've pulled the wheel when you were driving, that is fucking disgusting, man. Unless you're about to kill someone, or hit a car, they should never touch that wheel. That is your wheel, you are learning. They should, tell you if you need to turn, but they should never, grab the wheel. That's such a sign of a bad instructor. But it happened at me on the year before. Because when I was at the Metal Gear Revengeance demo, the guy was telling people how to skip the cutscene. In the demo of a game that's promoting a game, and he's telling them to skip the cutscene. And sure, the cutscene's a good 5 minutes, but what if they wanted to watch it? And he's coming over and being really forceful and skipping it for them and stuff. And it was too in your face. It was like that pushy waiter that we've all had, where every time you put food in your mouth, he comes over and asks you a question, and you're like, I'm fucking eating. Like, let me eat, dude. You're doing a fantastic job, but you're losing your tip right now because you keep coming over. You're too pushy. And that's what it felt like. And a great example this year was on the Assassin's Creed demo. A guy had failed the mission, and it was on the screen where it says, retry the mission or quit. And somebody next to him, I think, was having trouble. So being a nice guy, he was leaning over and telling them something and informing them something that they didn't know, because I think they were stuck. And while he was doing this, one of the guys at the booth walked over to him, took the pad off his hands, and pressed retry for him. Like he didn't know how to retry. And I was just like, wow, that to me seems really rude. And I don't know if it's just me, but I don't understand why he thought that was necessary. If I was in his shoes, I would have gone over to him and I would have been like, do you need any assistance? And he might have said yes, and then I could have helped him out. But I don't know why it was that guy's first instinct to just grab the pad. That to me seems really, really bizarre. But to try and tie a bow on this, because this has gone much longer than I expected, and I know it would because it's not scripted, and I don't even have anything to look at in front of me. I'm just talking at a microphone, which is something I don't really do, and that's why tangents will happen. But I got to meet some subscribers, which was awesome. I'd like to thank everybody who took the time to say hello and that. It's awesome to put a face to it, and you're now part of a private echelon that knows what I look like, which is, kind of exclusive, which is cool. But especially to Hobo and Heretic, Like, they were infinitely patient with us because we're all a bit of a crazy bunch and we didn't really know what we were doing, and we were all kind of disappointed with the convention, and I was trying my best not to let it show. And I bet they were disappointed as well, which sucks because they'd paid money and they'd come, quite a distance, especially Heretic. Heretic caught trains and shit to get there, and they didn't get a chance to play much, so my highlight was being around those new people. And I say new people, I know them on the internet, I just don't know them in person. So it was just being able to be as a group and stuff. And we wandered around some areas of Manchester, and we got some food at KFC, as I've mentioned, and there was no fucking tables to sit down, so we were awkwardly perched on the side, like overlooking people eating in the most uncomfortable eating session ever. And all of us had really tired legs because we'd been stood up queuing and we were standing up to eat, and it was just total bullshit. But it was a really good day, and it was an even better day for everything that wasn't the convention, which is an interesting thing to say. And I'm hoping next year they put on a better spread, because unless there's something I really want to play and I know it's there, I wouldn't care if I missed it. And that's a really sad thing to say. But it's also incentivizes perhaps going to Eurogamer, perhaps, having a night out, like a weekend in London or something, hire a hotel, and this time take a camera, because I wanted to take one, but there's a whole load of bullshit that I'm not going to bore you with behind that topic. But just plans for the future and to bring some interesting content to the channel, because I would have loved to have filmed stuff. I could have filmed the Dark Souls demo, I just never thought. It's one of those things where we've seen the E3 demo quite a lot now with really crappy footage, and I could have took a really, really good camera if I'd have, been a little bit disrespectful to my parents and took it without them knowing, because I don't think my mum wanted me to take it. And they could have even filmed me playing, because my girlfriend was watching when I played. She kind of spectated the entire thing, so you could have seen my 20-minute session, and you could have seen the live reactions and everything, which would have been cool, but unfortunately it's not the case. But yeah, if you're local to England and you're near Manchester, or you don't mind doing some travelling and you've been wanting to go to a convention, this might not be the one to go to unless you're a big guy for retro gaming, the old school gaming stuff, and you've got an appreciation for that. If you're going for just the modern things, it didn't cut it this year. It barely cut it last year, and I have no idea why they're not prioritising on such a opportunity to make revenue for themselves and for the publishers to get their game out there to the public. It's bizarre, but it is what it is. The good things, it's very cheap, unless you're buying stuff from the concession stands, because they'll fucking rob you in that building. It's expensive. But it was like 14 quid a ticket, which is nothing really. It's like, what, $20? And $20 for an entire day of playing everything for free? That's not bad at all. Cool people, lots of cool people. Talked to a random guy waiting for the Dark Souls 2 demo who was wearing a Dark Souls shirt that had got an Estus flask on it and like an Oscar of a Star and all this other stuff. Just really, really cool people. Nice guy, knew a lot of stuff, had fun on the demo. But yeah, a cool time for people that are interested in that stuff. So yeah, thank you for watching anyhow. I do apologise that I rabbited on a bit, but such is the nature of the channel and everybody's come to accept that, I believe. So you take care now.